Then we actually started going international. The timing was most horrible you can imagine.
Welcome to the Voice of Visma podcast, where the heartbeat of our community comes to life. Join us as we chat with Visma leaders and colleagues, sharing their stories, industry insights, and valuable career lessons.
Hello and welcome to the Voice of Visma podcast. My name is Filip and I'll be your host today. I work as a knowledge manager in Visma, working for the small business segment. And today we're finishing up our focus on the small business segment with Ari-Pekka Salovaara. Welcome to the studio. Nice to have you.
Thank you. Great to be here, Filip.
Yeah. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you came to start your first company at the very young age of 22?
Yeah, so me and my co-founders, we were studying in the university and we didn't know much about anything and not about the leadership or sales or marketing or anything, but we were very overconfident. So we were thinking that we can actually do things better than many others.
Yeah.
So we were thinking that, we can start the business and be highly successful. Unfortunately, we were not. The first business idea failed. But then the second idea, we got that almost by accident. So we built that more for our own needs.
Right.
And then we got actually quite good success with that. And that product was called Severa.
Yeah, because that's sort of how you found your way into Visma eventually, right, with the Severa product. But can you tell me a little bit about that accident? How did they came about?
Yeah, so we had this consulting business on the side, and then we had to invoice our work hours from customers, and so we need the software for that, and we built that for our own needs, and then customers started to want to have the same system, and we realized that there is a business potential for that. I think we had 5 customers, 3 of them paying for us when we started the new business with that idea.
Right. And that company grew, and eventually you decided to sell that company to Visma. But can you tell us a little bit before that, sort of the standout moments in that journey from, the happy accident that came to be the product until it actually became a successful company?
Yeah, so we were doubling the revenues every year, and it was going quite nicely. We didn't get any funding, so we didn't go for VC funding or anything. So we were cash flow funded, and the business grew well. We did a couple of really good recruitments, so that helped a lot. And then, then we actually started going international. The timing was most horrible you can imagine. So it was 2008.
Okay, right.
And we went to the US market and many others. And we got actually customers from multiple markets, but we started bleeding a lot of money. Then we realized that we need to change that. So then we were thinking that we establish offices to different countries. So first office we built was in Stockholm.
Yeah.
And then we were thinking that we will continue doing that, establish more offices to new markets. But for that, we do need the funding. So we made the decision to raise first VC round ever for us.
Yeah. And
board approved that. And then I think 3 days after that board decision, Visma called us.
Oh, really? That quick?
Yeah, so that was, we didn't even announce it. So it was kind of by accident.
Someone told someone who told someone.
Yeah, maybe. But then, the timing was perfect. And also for us, it was the financial crisis. So we were thinking that how this business will go for the future and how much money we need and so on. So timing was really good. I mean that the financial crisis hit quite hard for our customers. So if we previously were growing, I think 150% at the beginning of the year.
Wow.
And when the financial crisis hit, then the growth cut a lot. But we were still growing, so it was...
Yeah. And sort of what is that feeling? Like you're still very young at that time and you have built this company that's growing at that pace. What's that feeling like? Is it scary or intimidating, or do you get used to it?
Yeah, of course you start to think that this is kind of the first real job you have after graduating. So then when Visma offered a lot of money to buy the company, of course that is a lot of money. So that was a big factor, and it's not like that this is a lifetime project that I've been building it the whole lifetime. It was more like that we built it during the studies, and it became fairly successful, but not huge yet. So in that sense, it felt like that. Visma timing was super good, and
And do you remember what sort of? I could imagine that there were other suitors also that you could have gone with, but what made you decide to go with Visma?
There is something. We got the hunch that there is something special about the Visma. But of course, we didn't really believe all the sales bits that we heard. But there was something about Visma's model, and of course, the market presence in the markets where we want to be. There was a lot of positive things, and kind of hunch that this could be a good thing. And the whole process was super fast. I mean that from the first call to actually signing to sell the company, I think it was like 1 month.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's very
it was. Visma was also super eager to make the deal done.
Exactly. They didn't want you to change your opinion, I assume. So it's good that you have a fast process there. And then when you joined the Visma group and you continue on working for Salovaara for a few years, and then more and more products join Visma in Finland, and the decision is made to merge those companies into Visma Solutions, and you get to be the managing director, and you continue working with that business, growing it. And I'm curious, how does that feel? Again, starting your own business, very small, and then all of a sudden you're the managing director for this big company with several products, and all of a sudden it's almost corporate, and it's not sort of a startup anymore.
If we are perfectly honest, we were not planning to stay in Visma. We were thinking that once the earnout is over, we go and start some new company or something new. And then, but we realized that there was a lot of interesting things happening, because many of the things that we expected to happen didn't happen. We suddenly had the same freedom, or actually even more freedom, to run the business than before joining Visma. It felt like that our previous board was actually putting more demands to us than Visma did. So that was a huge surprise. Also, the other thing was that Visma didn't enforce us to follow some specific guidelines. What was surprising is that this was a very small company, 2 million euros or something when we sold it. But Visma decided to copy a lot of things that we were doing to the other Visma companies.
Okay.
And that was something that we didn't expect to happen. But based on those kind of experiences, deciding to stay in Visma, the last thing was actually was the M&A part. Because when our earnout was close to ending, then we got the opportunity to acquire or merge with the other product called NetVisor. And that was about the same size team as we were, 20, 30 people, and so on. So not huge. But what came out of it was something quite amazing.
Yeah.
I mean that after that, a year later, we did the same with Maventa. It was the electronic invoicing system. A little bit later, Visma Sign, the digital document signing service, and so on. So suddenly we had multiple products, and all of these were really small businesses originally. But then it grew to something completely amazing. I mean that we had, when we sold the business to Visma, it was 2 million in revenues. And then 2019, it was 60 million.
Yeah, that's tremendous.
And I think this year it's 160 million.
Yeah. Oh, those are crazy numbers. And I imagine sort of leading that company, did your mindset change? You said that you had a lot of freedom. Did you still feel like you were an entrepreneur, or did you feel like it was becoming more corporate, or how does that mind shift?
I think it was a little bit, I was very entrepreneur mindset. I didn't apply to work in Visma or anything like that. So I still thought myself as an entrepreneur, both good and bad. For example, the bad was that once I think we had 150 employees or something without any mid-management, because I was thinking that we want to keep this organization very flat. And that result to some crazy stuff. I mean that one manager might have 60 employees or something like that. And that was a stupid mistake because I just want the company to stay flat, which is not paying attention what the company actually need and what the employees need. Of course, you cannot act as a leader if you have that kind of workload. So there was a lot of learnings, and we made a lot of mistakes. So if you just look at the numbers, it looks like a straight line from that looks amazing, or hockey stick, what you would like to see. But in reality, it was a lot of mistakes that we made, and we learned by doing, and that was probably one of the mistakes as well.
Oh, really?
You can actually find out these solutions, get advisors and stuff like that, so that you don't need to do those all those mistakes. But despite all of those mistakes, I think we did quite well.
Yeah, and I mean the numbers show it. So you definitely you did some things right as well, not only the mistakes, but maybe the mistakes are also part of that journey.
Yeah, and I said we were quite confident on the things that we do. Some could call at that time also arrogant. You could have avoid some of those mistakes by being kind of more open to think about and getting the advices and so on. But yeah, I think that's kind of the sometimes negative side of entrepreneurship is that
Yeah, but I think that's an interesting way to put it, that arrogance, because you need, maybe to be a little bit arrogant to start a company and to think that you can do something that hasn't been done, or to capture a new part of the market. And then at some point you need to maybe let go of that arrogance and think, oh, now that we're actually a company, this has been done before and you need to adapt. But I think that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, and you can really destroy even great companies with that. I mean that because then you are not open of learning from competitors, or if you think that you know the old answers, you are not open to learn from competitors or customers and so on. So you kind of, you end up making a big mistakes. Even maybe also all the big companies that have fallen are fallen because of this.
Yeah. So when your company was acquired by Visma, you said you were thinking of leaving, but then you ended up staying for quite a while. Was there ever a point where you thought, oh, maybe now I will stay here for as long as you did? Or was there always some part of you wanting to try something new?
I was never kind of open about it to anyone, but I was always kind of thinking kind of the next milestone. If I take this to this step, then I do something new. But then everything always changed so much. And there was so many new things that you kind of got so excited about the new things, that the new challenges that you faced. For example, at one point my idea was that I will kind of follow the textbook example, make myself useless. That's something that many of the business books recommend CEOs to do, and I was kind of thinking that's a good goal.
Yeah, and what does that mean, to make yourself useless?
Meaning that you basically delegate everything to others able to run the business. You can go for 6 months in a holiday and everything works. Yeah. But that's actually a horrible advice. Because I managed to achieve that in summer 2014. And I realized that what is left is super boring, signing some documents. And that was kind of the most miserable moment I had. But then I got this great advice that I've also said to many others, is that being managing director or CEO is the best job in the world, because you can choose what you do. Because you can keep the things you love, and then you can delegate the rest.
Right.
So MD role can be anything, because you can shape it any way you like. Of course, you have some basic responsibilities in any case, but if you love doing marketing, you can actually do marketing, or if you love doing sales, or if you love doing even product development. I know even some leaders of fairly big companies that still do software development.
Yeah.
So I mean that if that's your passion, you can actually somehow include that.
Yeah, you can make it work.
Yeah.
And then I think one of the big challenges that did come your way, or maybe even an opportunity, was to lead the small business segment, which you're today leading, and that came in the end of 2020, and it was at that time 300 million euros of business across markets. And can you tell us a little bit about how that felt, getting that offer, and what went through your mind at that time?
Actually, a year before that, there was an earlier step, and that was my current boss, or the previous boss, Stefan Torp, invited me to lead the 5 companies, be chairman of 5 companies. It was not the segment director role back then, and those were really cool companies, like Triple Dex and so on. But my first reaction was absolutely no. And I said it also out loud. I mean that there was many reasons to say that, but in the end it was a little bit fear of change, because I realized that I'd been managing director of or CEO or founder 15 years in a row, and I started to know how to do that stuff. That's easy for me, and that is completely opposite what to do with that new role. So I was thinking that, and also a big part of the success has always been dependent of having a great team around me. And then that job sounded very lonely, that you're actually the chairman of these 5 companies, of MDs that maybe don't even want to listen to you, and they want to run their own business and things, that you're more like annoyance with the budgets and all of that. So I was kind of thinking that, that doesn't sound exciting at all. So I think it was a lot of that. But then Stefan was very persistent, so he managed to get me accepting that role. And that was first with 5 companies and with his team, he leading the segment. But then a year later, it changed. So Merete asked me to lead the small business segment, which was then a big step up, much bigger business. And then that was more like a natural evolution of the previous role. I think the biggest change was going from this MD role to be the chair. And I even had asked one to mentor me there, so that I'm able to make the change. Because previously you're kind of holding the steering wheel, and now I'm going to do that. Now I need to be on the back seat and let others to lead the companies and be the stars in that sense. So I want to make sure that I don't end up being interfering with their work, just because I was doing that work before.
That's interesting. And was that sort of a shift also in leadership style? Because I imagine it's one thing to lead a company and have employees and even lead leaders, but then moving into that segment role and being asked to maybe not lead, but to mentor and to challenge managing directors and executive teams, that sort of change in leadership style, is that required?
Yeah, absolutely, because you're no longer taking the control of that company. You're more like an advisor. Of course, as a chair, you can also demand things, but you demand more like goals and that kind of thing. So you don't necessarily, or you don't participate on driving the actual business. So you're away from operational work. And that was, as I said, one of the biggest worries I had, that will I actually like that kind of role? Because it's so different. I was thinking that everyone doing that kind of job are 60-plus-year-old, and they're wanting to kind of retire and so on. And I didn't feel that I'm there yet.
Right. Yeah, so then you said sort of the first step was moving from one company to 5 companies, and then a year later over to the small business segment, which was even more companies. And you mentioned that the team was sort of the first step. Could you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the team was the first big step, but yeah, it was actually a very small team. It was 1.5 persons in the management team. But that was a team, and especially Valeria was super important. That is in the team still, and we were almost like co-founders of the segment. So we were thinking that how to build this, and we started analyzing that what made Visma successful before, what we could do differently, and then thinking about what's kind of inspiring goal, and how to measure that we are successful, because the budget itself is not very inspiring for us. So we were thinking about the valuation and then looking at who are the biggest in the world. The number one was Intuit. That's a little bit too big. So we look who is the second biggest in the world, and that was Xero. And they had done amazing work. I mean that investors loved them, and huge reputation in the market. So we started analyzing how we are doing against them. And we realized that we are almost half of their size. And our growth was only half of theirs.
Okay.
Their brand was amazing. They operate in the US, UK, Australia, so they had huge market potential for the future. And then we started comparing us that what we can do to fix that. For example, we were mostly operating in the Nordics, and investors will then see that we don't have that much room to grow if that is the case.
Right.
So we cannot be valued as high as them, because our future looks more limited. Yeah, so that was kind of the start.
Right. And then, I mean, looking at the numbers now, in 2025, you're 3 times the size of 2019, €1 billion in repeatable revenues, 20 markets, over 30 companies. Sort of, how does that happen? How do you triple a business of that size in that short of a time?
Yeah, I think there was... first of all, I think the biggest thing is in these companies. We acquired these amazing companies with amazing leaders and employees, and they built the success. So in reality, the segment management team we have is quite small. But of course, we did set the direction, what we want to do, and how we want to do it. Like I said, we were mostly in the Nordics. So one of the things we want to fix is to expand to more multiple markets, increase the total addressable market for us. And that was kind of one thing to fix that. Then the other one was that how we are going to accelerate the growth. So how to double the growth. And now even when the revenue is tripled, we are still growing twice as fast versus then. So, and that was a lot of things. So we had to invest in the products, make them better, increase the customer satisfaction. We want to put more money on the marketing and sales to acquire more customers, to accelerate the growth. And then, of course, acquire those companies, great companies in these new markets. And all of that cost money. So then we had to figure out how we can make the business more scalable so that we can free up more money when these companies grow, so that we can afford to do all of that. So it was a little bit tricky, but it turned out really nicely. And one of the things was how we thought about this expansion was that we want to buy amazing companies that are the future winners in these markets. So that even if we don't do our job very well, but these companies are so good that they will succeed even without our help. So that was kind of the criteria, what kind of companies we want to buy. But then on top of that, we want to make sure that once they join Visma, they actually perform better as part of Visma than outside Visma, which is easier said than done. I mean that I guess all big companies think like that.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to actually do the opposite. So you actually end up hurting the business because you kind of overload them, defocus them, and so on. So we want to make sure that we don't do any of that, but we try to give them something that they didn't have before. And for example, hiring you is one of the things, because now suddenly we have all these 30 plus companies that are doing amazing things, and they can actually share those knowledge that they have learned to each other.
Yeah.
And that is actually maybe the secret sauce we have that many, I guess none of our competitors have.
Yeah, and just coming back to your earlier answer about the mistakes that you made with Severa and maybe avoiding those, I think sort of the setup of the segment helps to not only share those mistakes, but also, as you said, those great success stories across the markets, and to really accelerate the companies once they join.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing we can give. And when you start your business and you become successful, you don't necessarily know where you are not successful because you don't necessarily know what others are doing and so on. But we have that insight because we have all those great companies, and you can see what's inside of those companies, what make them great. And sometimes it's small things that other companies can copy from others that has a huge impact on the business. It could be just the simple things like how you optimize the pricing or the customer contracts, or how you do the sales and marketing, or security, or whatever. So there is a lot of those small things, and they add up, making a big change.
Yeah. And now with the segment at 1 billion euros of ARR 2025, what's sort of the next step? What's the next lookout point? What's the next challenge for you? Is it already boring, or?
No, now we were looking at so let's look back. Who is the number in the world? Number one in the world, and that's Intuit. Back in the days, it looked like that they are 10 times the valuation of Visma Group. So it's way too far-fetched. But now we look at so how are they actually doing? How many customers they have in the QuickBooks Online? And that's 6 million. And we were thinking that, what it would take for us to reach 6 million customers, because the average revenue per customer was about the same as already what we have. So how we could do that? And then we started looking at Europe has about 35 million companies. And we are already the cloud accounting market leader in Europe. So reaching 6 million, we should be able to do that. So that's the next goal. I'm not setting the year on stone, because hopefully we are doing it sooner than we think.
That's great. That's great. And unfortunately, I think we're out of time. So that's a wrap for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for giving the listeners such a great story to listen to. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And remember, for those of you at home, each episode of Voice of Visma is designed to give you the inside look on Visma and our leaders and how they are shaping the future of society. So don't miss our next episode. There will be a new host, a new topic. We'll continue to explore Visma from the inside out. Make sure to subscribe to the Voice of Visma podcast where you get your podcast, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. And make sure that you never miss an episode by subscribing. And we'd love to hear from you. So leave us a review and share your thoughts. And again, thank you, Ari, for joining us.
Thank you, Philip.